People say that GTA 5 doesn't have a good story and its lore isn't interesting. They say this because they're wrong. It is insane the level of detail that exists in GTA 5's lore if you just dig a little bit below the surface. Most people though don't have 10,000 hours experience playing the single player version of GTA 5 like myself. Therefore, for years, people have been coming to me with their questions about the game, and I've kept the most interesting ones for this video. So today I'm going to answer all of your questions about Michael, his family, his deal with the FIB, his betrayal, and so on. I guarantee you by the end of this video, not only will you learn endless new things about Grand Theft Auto 5, you'll come to appreciate it more than you ever have before. How did Michael evolve in terms of family relations over the game? This is kind of a broad question, but in my opinion, I do think Michael always loved his family, but he never really, appreciated them. A big part of what changes this is both when his family leaves him, and then when Michael is forced to stay away from Los Santos to avoid Martin Madrazo, as he clearly comes to miss them.
Listen, if you get this, can you give me a ring? Tell your mom too, will ya? And Tracy. Please, son.
You're not making my situation any easier!
Oh, there's a surprise! I knew it would become about you!
I miss my family!
Oh, you're full of shit! All you ever did was ignore them, and now that they're gone, you miss them! Fucking incredible!
I mean, I've lost everything that matters. I'm hanging with a maniac who's certain to kill me if the government doesn't do it first. I want my family back.
Earlier in the game, when Michael looked at his family, all he would see is their flaws and judge them for not being better people. And I think by the end of the game, Michael more comes to terms with the fact that he is fucked up, and so it's kind of understandable that his family is also fucked up.
All right, you are just a lame and angry psycho sometimes. You do bad shit and things. I don't know if I love you, and I'm pretty sure I hate you a little bit, but I'm just so fucking upset that we can't even see each other. And you're just a drunk, lame dad.
That might just be the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me.
I think Trevor plays a big part in Michael accepting his own flaws, as he works to deflate Michael and remind him that he isn't actually better than the rest of them, as he likes to pretend.
Just because I like the life and you feel guilty about it doesn't make you more of a man than me.
That
Is so fucking typical of you. So typical. You instantly think about yourself.
You're right. I did do that. Apologize. I mean, let's face it, Amanda. We're trailer trash. You and me.
He comes to see that he isn't somehow above the flaws of his family. They are all flawed, and they do care about each other. Honestly though, I think what most changed wasn't his relationship with his family, but Michael's own self-hatred and dissatisfaction with his life that he was blaming his family for.
Big house and a useless kid, and I'm stuck talking to you because no one else gives a shit. Oh, I'm living a dream, baby.
What do you want, Michael?
I don't know. I want something that isn't this.
So Michael eventually stops blaming his family for his own dissatisfaction with his life, in part because he finds more satisfaction with it, like when he starts working at the movie studio.
Feels like I've finally done something with my life.
A part of Michael's dissatisfaction also came from missing his criminal days, the one thing that he felt he was good at that he blamed his family for snatching him away from.
Oh man, we're back in action.
What happened to dying with a gun in your hand? Life happened. Annoying wife, 2 kids. Remember them? You get tied down, you can't move anymore.
But going through all his trials throughout the game reminds him that the old days were not as great as he remembers.
Oh, hey!
I've been doing some thinking. I put my feet up and I reflected. My feet were literally up on a fucking meat hook. You know, I think that did more for my mental health than all these years of therapy combined. I mean, I know what I want now. What I want is I want my family back. I want to make something. I don't want nobody owning me. I'm paying the last of my debt stock, and I'm starting over again.
Also, now having Franklin in his life to constantly remind Michael how good he has it likely also helped.
Let's feel sorry for Michael. Rich, white Michael, poor Michael, who robbed banks for 10 years, then got his slate wiped clean.
Yeah.
Man, where's my get-out-of-jail-free card, motherfucker?
I'm sorry, okay?
So as Michael's experiences caused him to be a less bitter, ungrateful, judgmental person, it enabled him to have a better relationship with his family. To be clear, Michael still hates himself to some degree by the end of the game.
I know, I still hate myself. But hey, at least I know the words for it now.
He just doesn't hate his life as much and acknowledges his own flaws, so blames others less for where he ended up in life and accepts some culpability. What was the financial status of Michael before the Jewel Store Heist? He was very clearly broke, but it's not immediately obvious to people why. For a start, we don't actually know how financially prepared Michael was to get out of the game and retire.
I made a deal. His name is Dave Norton, nice guy, realist. He gets the glory, I get out.
If it was Michael who first reached out to Dave to figure out a deal between them, you can assume Michael said, "You know what, I've got enough money, I think I can quit." But if it was Dave who found Michael leading to the deal, maybe Michael wasn't prepared. He's looking at his bank accounts like, yeah, I guess I've got enough to quit, maybe. As we don't know exactly how their deal came to be, we don't know how prepared Michael was for us. Regardless of the exact amount of money that Michael managed to steal throughout his heisting career, we do know that his savings amounted to many millions of dollars.
Who is this guy using my dead friend's tired-ass movie quotes? In a house that must have been paid for with my dead friend's stashed millions? I guess I'm happy you made it out alive, and with enough money to make sure your kids became total, complete nightmares.
Hey.
I mean, if you'd taken less, a couple million, they'd only be dicks. But with your savings, you were able to truly, completely ruin them.
But obviously, in the 9 years of Michael's retirement, he lost most, if not all of this money. At the end of marriage counseling, when Michael realizes that he needs to give $2.5 million to Martin Madrazo, he says to Franklin,
"Oh man, I'm mortgaged up to my eyeballs."
When you switch to Michael at the beginning of the game, he can be sitting on a bench on the phone where he says,
"Hey, I'm good for the money. I always pay my dues. I'll make the account good next week. I promise."
So clearly there's someone hounding Michael for money at this point. One possible reason for this is day trading, which to simplify is like gambling with the stock market. Michael references that he's trying to stop doing it.
And I'm about to email you a link for the exchange. You can put in some trades of your own.
I'm trying to stay off the day trading.
I've seen your day trader account. Give it up. You pissed our savings down the toilet.
Our savings?
Yeah, our savings. I gave up everything to start this life with you, you selfish shit. Just please give me some warning before they repossess.
And Lester, at some point when he's asking Michael why he needs money, he inquires, "What, you've been day trading again?"
So, what do?
We walk away. It's not like we need the money.
About that.
You've been day trading?
No, God no.
My belief is that Michael, having spent so long running from the law, doing all these bank robberies, he was effectively addicted to the adrenaline.
You're plainly addicted to chaos.
Even though he had convinced himself that he wanted to settle down, he didn't take to it very well. He missed that excitement.
Man, I want to be a good dad, but at the same time, I really want the other stuff too. I need to do something. Scotch and sunshine and sitting on my ass? Fuck that, I'm better than that.
Gambling, day trading, is another way of bringing up your adrenaline, having some excitement in your life even though you're sort of sedentary now. Are you going to lose a lot of money? You're going to make a lot of money? Who knows? But day trading wasn't enough to put the excitement, the risk back in Michael's life. I suspect this is why he started to sleep with strippers. I mean, something dangerous. It might ruin your relationship with your wife, which of course it ended up doing.
I was faithful to you up until I found you in a stripper.
But this wasn't Michael's only issue, as he also had many expenses, like the 5 figures a month that he was paying to Dave as a part of their deal.
Most witnesses don't transfer 5-figure sums into a particular FIB agent's bank account every month.
While it's not explicitly stated how much that is, even if it was only 10 grand a month for 9 years, that's a lot of money. Michael, of course, was also living in a mansion in one of the most expensive parts of the world, and his family weren't exactly shy when it came to spending money.
We have earned ourselves a drink. I am exhausted.
Babies, the only thing that's worn out is my credit card.
I understand. Money is an issue, eh?
Money isn't an issue.
The only thing you gotta worry about anymore is what part of your body you want to have chopped off or sucked out again.
You used to be fatter. Nice new tits, by the way. Are those lips fake as well, or just the tits?
All these factors combined would quickly dry up many millions of dollars over the course of almost a decade. So basically, while Michael and his family may have started with a lot of money, likely enough to live the rest of their lives, they clearly didn't manage it well and so were in a bad financial situation. Did Michael only get involved into the FIB's plans because of the Jewel Store Heist? I think it was the reporting on the Jewel Store Heist that led Steve Haines to notice details about the job as being similar to the jobs that the deceased Michael Townley used to do.
Anyone who knows your file, what is wrong with you?
And that did lead him to look through Dave Norton's files and realize that Dave and Michael had made a deal and Michael was still alive. So without that heist, maybe Steve wouldn't have realized immediately that Michael was alive. I don't think though that Michael getting involved in Dead Man Walking and looking for Mr. K's body was done at the direction of Steve. I think Dave needed some help and saw Michael as a person who could help. But of course Dave wouldn't want the wider FIB to learn of Michael being alive, so maybe the only reason he thought to ask Michael at all is because they were already in contact again because of the Jewel Store Heist.
I know you did that fucking jewelry job.
Davey, seriously, you're imagining things.
Fuck you.
in saying that it wasn't really the jewel store heist itself that led to all this happening, and more Michael returning to a life of crime. And I'm of the belief that Michael would have returned eventually to a life of crime, even had he not pulled down Martin Madrazo's house. Michael was mortgaged up to his eyeballs, he had no money, he was sick of his life, he was bored, Franklin came into his life. All the variables saying, look man, you gotta go back to crime, you gotta go steal some money, were all there. And so if it wasn't the jewel store heist, it was gonna be something else. Eventually he would have returned to a life of crime, that would have been reported, Trevor would have heard about it, Dave would have gone, what is wrong with you? And everything would have gone out the same way. Why did Michael have to work for Steve Haines? When Steve became Dave's new boss, it's implied that Steve went through Dave's files and found out that Michael is still alive.
Then I guess you getting involved with a clapped-out old agent who's been living off of past glories was your first mistake.
And he therefore, of course, found out about their secret deal, that Dave's promotion was based on a complete lie, that Dave didn't actually kill Michael.
I made your career.
And we better go about saving it together.
And having this knowledge, of course, he lorded this over Michael and Dave.
Davey, you can't do anything about this fucking turd?
Yeah, Dave? What can you do about me?
So is he gonna be a problem?
For sure. But there's nothing we can do about it. If something happened to him right now, I'd be right under a microscope. And that would make it very difficult to keep old secrets.
Oh, well, boo for you.
He's like, hey, do exactly what I say, or I'm gonna spill the beans that Dave is a fraud, and you're still alive, and you'll of course go away forever. Which Dave did say would likely happen if what was in his files became well known.
Someone comes into my office, starts reading my files. I know a lot of stuff. I can cop a plea, get 5 years, but you...
Fuck you ungrateful prick.
So Michael was effectively working for Steve Haines to guarantee his silence, but also to secure Dave's continued position at the FIB. Dave says, hey look, if I get fired, if I go down, then they're gonna go through my files and you're gonna go down as well. A part of what we do in the mission, the Bureau Raid, is delete the FIB files on both Trevor and Michael.
We do the job, and maybe you can delete the files when you're inside doing whatever else you're doing. That might be a way out.
But even after we delete those files, that still leaves the loose ends of Dave and Steve who know Michael is still alive. But during ending C, Michael does say that Dave has to be kept alive so no one else will screw with them.
Just gotta silence a few noisy people. Steve Haines.
Dave Norton.
No, we need him alive.
Why?
So nobody fucks with us afterwards.
Mean that he can continue to be the corrupt government official protecting their little unit. But Steve, of course, had to be taken out because he couldn't be trusted.
Oh my God.
Why does Steve ambush Michael in the wrap-up? I mean, Steve explains it. The Bureau's onto him. They've realized that he's doing all this weird, shady shit.
They know or think they know that I'm the one that was behind the incident.
Well, the Bureau was already onto Steve Haines. The incident he's referring to here is the Bureau Raid, which we did specifically for him to delete evidence.
There's some, evidence. And I need you guys to find out what they know.
We are not told specifically for what reason they suspect Steve was involved though. And so now Steve sees Michael as a liability. Michael knows a lot of stuff about Steve's shady dealings, and if Michael was taken by any agency, Mike would be looking at life in prison, if not the death penalty.
I will go to jail and you will get shot.
Ah, fuck you, Dave.
Obviously, in such a scenario, it would make sense for Michael to be like, hey yo, this Steve Haines guy, he's done a lot of shady shit. I was involved, but he forced me to do it. He's a real bad dude. Let me tell you about it.
I've even got some fools in our own bureau that are questioning my methods. Think I'm a liar, a cheater, some kind of a killer and a thief!
Which would of course sink Steve's career, something he cares a lot about, and would likely see him in jail as well. So basically, as far as Steve was concerned, Michael had moved from being an asset to being a liability.
Agent Sanchez, arrest these men, both of them.
Steve,
Oh, whoa, arrest me for what?
Because
Because you don't want me to testify in court about our various business dealings, right?
And therefore wanted him taken care of in some way. Dave, of course, does defend Michael from Steve.
we agreed to speak to Michael, to try and explain things to him. Not this.
It's hard to say how much of that is the begrudging friendship that they have, and how much of it is Dave just trying to save his own neck. Because obviously if Michael was formally taken in by the Bureau, people would realize that he was still alive, go, hey Dave, isn't this the guy that you killed? And whose death kind of made your career? Like, we promoted you for killing this guy. Why is this guy still alive? It would then of course all come out that Dave and Michael had that corrupt deal, and at best Dave would be fired, at worst he would end up in jail. Okay, so why did Michael trust Franklin, a kid who did repo to rob a jewelry store? I mean, obviously they do things between the mission complications and the jewel store job. On the mission complications, Michael does compliment Franklin's willingness to just follow orders and not take responsibility.
I appreciate a kid who follows orders without taking responsibility. Yeah, maybe one day we'll have a beer, and I'll explain how the world really works.
He'd obviously be impressed somewhat Franklin's willingness to drive through the glass. Whether or not Michael was really serious about getting a drink with Franklin and explaining how the world works, the whole thing with complications just shows that Michael was bored. His life wasn't exciting. Of course, his old life was dangerous, but at least there was some excitement. He was doing things.
Oh man, I'm fucking excellent. My heart ain't pumped like that in years. Oh, yes, fucking A, Bubba.
Man.
All the lashing out we see Michael do at the beginning of the game is to indicate that Michael is like in a cage, screaming, "Let me out, I'm sick of this." So when Franklin goes to Michael's house to get their drink, whether or not Michael is actually serious, and they have a bit of a conversation, Michael's like, fuck it, let's go for a drink. It's not like he had anything better to do.
I'm going for a drink.
Dad, I'm in our boat going down the Western Highway. It's been stolen.
What? The yacht's been stolen?
It was then the phone call from Jimmy that gave Franklin another opportunity to prove himself. I mean, he jumped from a car on a freeway onto a boat. Obviously, that's going to impress Michael. Not just that he could physically do that, but that he was willing to do that for Michael.
You listen to me, you little shit. That kid just jumped off the hood of a moving car to save your ass.
After that, of course, is marriage counseling, where Michael's gonna chase down the tennis pro. And he says to Franklin, "Hey, are you in?" And Franklin's like, "Yeah, fuck it." Franklin is willing to help Michael pull down a house.
We hooked up, man.
Obviously, by the time we get to the Jewel Store Heist, Franklin has proven himself multiple times to both be capable and to be useful to Michael. It's also possible that there was a little bit of a fatherly feeling coming through that.
What, am I detecting some sort of son I never had bullshit here, Mikey, huh?
Franklin like the son he never had. Michael directly says that about Franklin in somewhat of a joking way on 3's Company, but I do think it's true to some extent.
That's Franklin, the son I always wanted.
Franklin, the young criminal trying to make it in the world, just like Michael once was. Michael, who at this point is trying to somewhat recapture his youth, actually has a person who is youthful doing the same things he was doing.
And I hooked up with this old associate. I even got a new one, too. This kid. I don't know, he's got similar proclivities.
So yeah, there were a lot of factors that led to Franklin being trustworthy enough for the Jewel Store Heist. But also there was the factor that Michael didn't really have anyone else. When Michael says we should get the old guys back together, Lester says, there are no old guys, Michael.
Moses, ironically, he found Jesus. All those Irish crazies, they mostly just disappeared. That crew from the south, they all went down.
In other words, anyone Michael was taking on the job would be someone he doesn't really know all that well.
You got potential. I see it. Mikey obviously saw it the moment he met you.
Funnily enough, Franklin was probably the person Michael knew the most and trusted the most of anyone he took on the Jewel Store job. In Prologue, after Michael gets shot by Dave, how did he manage to survive with all the police cars showing up? While we don't know every detail of the plan to get Michael away, we do at least know that there was a plan between Dave and Michael before the heist.
You said you'd clean the whole thing up back in North Yankton.
And you told me it'd be a clean job, no casualties. There were more eyes on that town than there needed to be.
Despite the police being there, it does seem as though Michael, Trevor, and Brad ended up at the planned end point, because the only way Dave could have been there is if that place was planned from the get-go. And given that Michael already intended to fake his death, Dave and Michael would have put forth some plan to get him out. And we can just therefore assume that the existence of the police didn't jeopardize that plan. I think it's possible that on Dead Man Walking, Dave references a part of this plan.
Well, you've played dead before, haven't you?
So Michael just played dead until he got to the point where he'd be able to get away and Dave covered his tracks. More interesting to me is whether or not Dave had accomplices in this plan. It could be, for example, that the 5-figure payment that Michael makes to Dave every month isn't specifically for Dave, but it's to pay off whoever ended up helping Dave. Dave being fine with the glory and promotion, but the underlings that may have helped with the nitty-gritty details of getting Michael away needing money, and the continued payments just continues to buy their silence.
And most witnesses don't transfer 5-figure sums into a particular FIB agent's bank account every month.
To my knowledge, there's no evidence of that, but it would make Dave being able to get Michael away more believable if he had some help. Is it really explained why Michael's family hates him at the beginning of the game? Certainly boiling it down to one thing is probably unwise, but Michael did fuck a bunch of strippers, which obviously didn't make Amanda particularly happy with him. Like Tracy was hanging out with her friends and Michael storms up, throws their music into the ocean, and then pulls her away. Obviously she's not gonna be happy with that.
I'm getting a cab.
How about I just drive us home?
You ruined my life.
She wants to be on Fame or Shame, Michael ruins that too. Jimmy wants to play his video games, Michael literally breaks his TV. Obviously, it's not these specific events that lead to the animosity that we see immediately when we first start playing as Michael.
This marriage, it's a joke.
I'm laughing inside.
But we can assume many events like this would have occurred throughout the years. His kids wanting to express themselves the way that they want to, and Michael being like, I don't understand, this is terrible, stop it, I know what's best for you.
Stop calling!
You can also see, for example, at the beginning of Father-Son, when Amanda is yelling at Tracy,
He is not staying the night,
Oh
he's
my
a
God!
bum! I don't
don't
even
get
know
it.
why you are with him, he is a bum!
Ultimately, Amanda and Michael disagreed with how Jimmy and Tracy were living their lives, and that caused a rift between them. But calling it hatred on the part of his family may be a little bit strong. I do think there was still some love between Michael and his family. It just took some time for them to see that. On the mission complications, why is Michael in the back of Jimmy's car? While it's not stated explicitly, I do think Michael was hiding from his wife and the tennis pro.
God, you've got great hips, you know that?
He likely suspected something was going on there and he was trying to overhear what they were saying. This is consistent with how Michael later responds to seeing tennis rackets on his front doorstep, as these alone lead him to conclude that they are screwing right now, and so he goes to confront them. It's clear that he already suspected that something was going on, so that explains his past behavior. Why did Michael have to pull down the tennis coach's house? Couldn't he just walk up to his door and shoot him? Even if Michael wasn't just enraged and lashing out, he still wouldn't have shot and killed the guy. A key feature of Michael as a character is that he does not like unnecessary killing.
All right, look, you want to live? Tell me you want to live. We'll work this out.
For sure I want to live. Tell me to put the gun down.
Ain't gonna happen, pal.
Make a move. I got all day.
Fuck! You didn't have to do that. We can have a little fun with him, but let's not try to kill this prick, all right?
I didn't mean anything by it, all right?
Clearly ain't being humble, T. You proved your point.
You should be wanting to rip the fucking ponytail off the back of this guy's head.
Biggest score of our lives, we ain't taking any chances. Sorry, Pally.
T.
Well,
It ain't a chance. He's in on it. You tell him something that ain't on the news already. This whole thing was your idea.
Yeah, I always jumped. I never saw a thing.
Go!
He kills in situations where he feels he has to.
I do what's gotta be done.
He will go to some pains to avoid killing people, and it is one of the reasons why he clashed with Trevor. But obviously, Michael wasn't thinking clearly, he was just lashing out in anger. He wasn't thinking of the best way to resolve this conflict. And Martin points this out to Michael, where he says, hey look man, if you'd been thinking a bit more clearly, you probably would have realized the tennis coach wouldn't have lived in a house like that.
I thought the owner was banging my wife.
Well, that was a strange house for a tennis coach.
I wasn't thinking straight.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Why the hell does Amanda get mad at Michael when she is the one cheating with other guys? For a start, it's stated clearly that Michael was the first one to cheat.
I was faithful to you up until I found you in a stripper.
Michael doesn't dispute this, and he obviously would if it wasn't true. While Jimmy does say that Amanda was a skank back in the day at the end of Father-Son, there seems to be referencing before Amanda and Michael got married.
My brother from another mother. I mean, I hope so, because my mom was kind of a skank back in the day.
During Reuniting the Family, we do get a long list of all the people that Amanda has slept with.
My yoga teacher, or our tennis coach, or the juice guy, or the dog walker, or Jimmy's third grade teacher.
But there's no evidence to suggest that she would have done this had Michael remained faithful. Honestly, you could speculate that one of the reasons that Amanda was so open with bringing men around the house was to get back at Michael for his infidelity. Also, Amanda sleeping with all these men is technically not her cheating, as by this point they're in an open relationship, and therefore they agree they can sleep with other people. The relationship is so open that you can even find Amanda's dating profile in the game. I believe Michael acknowledges this specifically when he's talking to the psychic on his phone. It's why when Michael confronts Amanda for sleeping with a tennis pro, he's like, we had a deal, not in our house, not in our bed.
Amanda! You better not be! Not in my house. In my own bed?
Michael, go away!
No, I'm sorry, bro. She said you had an arrangement.
You and I are gonna have an arrangement. Look, we got rules. Not in the house. Not guys I gotta look in the eye. Or pay for the privilege.
As in, they're both free to sleep with whoever they want, but Michael doesn't want to hear or see it. But in Amanda's mind, it's like, fuck you, Michael, I don't want to be here, I don't want to deal with any of this shit, this is all your fault, you're the one who ruined our relationship by fucking strippers. While Amanda probably still loves Michael to some extent, even at the start of the game, if it were not for their particular circumstances, she may have already left him.
I would divorce your ass if I could.
Whether it be the deal they have with Dave or Amanda fearing Michael would silence her, she feels like she can't leave, and blatantly sleeping with so many men is partly her way of getting back at him. Is it true that Michael was using Franklin? I assume this is referring to ending B, where Michael says, "You were like a son to me," and Franklin fires back, "We used each other, that's what happened."
Franklin! You were like a son to me!
We both used each other, that's what happened!
And whether that's true, I guess it depends what you mean by used. I think it's obvious that Franklin and Michael benefited in a host of ways from their relationship. I don't really think on Michael's part that it was some cold calculated, I'm gonna use this Franklin guy to get a bunch of money, ha ha ha. I think it's pretty obvious that Michael did care for Franklin.
There's this kid who's been helping me. Maybe we could cut him in. Hey, you're a good kid, Franklin. I'll find something for you. Big.
Call Franklin Clinton. Tell him to meet us at the lot.
Hey, I barely know that kid. He's fixing up my car. 2-bit gangster going 3-bit. And now you're gonna... Gap! The only one who was ever decent to you!
Michael also warned Franklin about his troubled deals with Dave and Trevor and suggested that Franklin stay away.
Hey, Franklin.
What's going on?
You gotta get out of town.
All right, man, look, man, you help me. Way I see it, man, the least I can do is help you.
It's a death sentence, Franklin. Come on, you better take off. Really.
Shit, I'm good. I ain't bailing.
However you look at their relationship, I don't think Michael was simply manipulating Franklin so he was useful to him. Do we know when or how Michael met Dave? As far as I'm aware, we don't know much about Dave's past, and we certainly don't know when Michael met him, which leaves open the question of who met who. It is possible that Michael had the idea of getting out, and so he sought out someone in the bureau, someone unremarkable that he could potentially manipulate, or it's possible that Dave was the one who found out where Michael was. Maybe it was a fluke on Dave's part, so he came in somewhat unprepared. Maybe it was just him versus Michael in that moment. In such a scenario, neither of them having the upper hand, maybe then they hashed out a deal.
His name is Dave Norton, nice guy, realist. He gets the glory, I get out.
But as I say, we don't know. Did the sniper in North Yankton actually shoot Michael, or did he act like he got hit? I think we can assume, regardless of how it was done, Dave did shoot something and Michael did get hit by something.
I'm hit!
We do get to see Dave, his gun, move, it make the sound, the whistle of the bullet as it flies through the air, and the hitting sound. Like, yeah, that could have all been faked, but the timing of it was so perfect. It's not like Michael could see Dave clearly to be like, okay, his gun, it seems, yes, it's now moved. That means I should be going like this right now. Oh, like all the sounds and movements synced up so perfectly that it couldn't have just been an axe. And you do see some material like jump off Michael. If we move the camera, we can see Rockstar bothered giving Brad enter and exit wounds whilst not giving them to Michael. I don't think this is best explained by Michael just wearing a bulletproof vest, because this is a sniper bullet after all, it would go through us. Like, surely Brad, Michael, and Trevor would have been wearing bulletproof vests when they're going into a heist. I think it's more likely that Dave used some sort of a bullet that doesn't penetrate bulletproof vests, and so Michael felt the hit and went down. That's just what makes the most sense to me. Was the train a part of Dave and Michael's plan? I think it's fair to say no, because in the original plan they were not meant to be pursued. Contextually, we can assume that the yokel local was meant to be waiting for them. They were going to get in the car. The yokel local would then drive down the road, having a car that's standard for the area. No one would bat an eye.
Cops! Be cool! They ain't made this car yet.
Then as he got to the turn, he would stop, let them out, they would walk to where the helicopter was meant to be, and he would drive on his way. In fact, when the gang is shooting their way out of the depot, they express concern that the local yokel won't be there.
Kid might have failed! This wasn't in the job description!
Because obviously the yokel local wouldn't have expected so much police attention. Why did Michael fake his death in the first place? I suppose the most direct answer we get is on the Mission 3's company where he's talking to Trevor.
What happened to dying with a gun in your hand? Life happened. Annoying wife, 2 kids. Remember them?
We also get some direct clarification when Michael is talking to Franklin at the end of Fresh Meat.
Man, you burned every motherfucker you've ever known.
It was that or die. Look, I know it sounds cold. I don't expect you to understand it. Not yet, but you will. When you got ties of your own. Look, you wake up one day and your legs, they just give. You just can't run anymore.
He directly says to Franklin, and we hear him say to Amanda in flashbacks, look, it was either I got out or I died.
It was the only thing I could do. Either everyone dies or one guy gets out. I'm that guy.
He was getting old, he was tired of running from place to place, not really being able to spend his money, he had a family to care for.
I had a young family, Franklin. I was running with a crew of crazy motherfuckers with nothing to lose. I saw an out, a future for me, for my family. I took it.
He knew that one day he was gonna end up dead.
But I got a fucking family, Trevor. We were all gonna die.
So he devised his plan to fake his death and bury those he thought might come after him. Brad, of course, was meant to live and act as a witness for the criminal underworld to be like, I saw him, man, Michael Townley died, it was terrible. Dave, of course, handling the justice side of things. Oh yeah, man, I shot that guy dead and he's never coming back. So the criminal world therefore wouldn't have reason to look for him, and the justice system wouldn't either. He'd be truly free. I'm not sure it comes up here, but it's not obvious to most people that Michael's face wasn't super known to the public. That's why they used aliases and masks during heists and stuff.
I saw your face, I'll remember you.
We forget 1,000 things every day. How about you make sure this is one of them?
This in part what made it feasible for him just to go back to a normal life. During the time has come where Franklin kills Michael, he gets a call from Amanda saying Tracy's going to college. Does she? And what about the other endings? As you likely remember, when Franklin confronts Michael, Michael gets a phone call where he basically says, man, I really hope I don't die anytime soon. I've got such a bright future ahead of me. It would be a shame if I was about to die moments from now.
Man, I don't know what I did to deserve this motherfucking luck. Got my kids back, my wife, job that I love.
And a part of that is Amanda mentioning that Tracy's going to college.
Our Tracy? Real college? You gotta be kidding me.
I don't think it's answered anywhere in the game if she actually ends up going to college. But if you do end up killing Michael, there is a sign out the front of his house that says for sale, likely meaning that Amanda and Tracy and Jimmy have moved somewhere else. It makes sense that they'd want to run because they wouldn't necessarily know how Michael died or why.
F, you see my dad? We ain't seen him for a while.
I'm sure they have their suspicions, but they wouldn't know for certain. This especially makes sense considering that Michael's family are still away at the end of the game, hiding from Merryweather, as is mentioned at the end of Meltdown.
They came to my house, Lester. My house. So I asked Amanda and the kids to move out for a few days.
So would Tracy end up going to college? It depends on how readily she could get over the death of her father and whether or not her move would disrupt her plans. So it's possible, but not certain. Also, we can assume Michael's death would play no financial factor for the family at the time, since Lester decides to give Michael's cut from the big score to the family, as seen in the post-credits text messages. In ending A, where Franklin kills Trevor, I would say that she probably would go to college. It isn't as if Tracy getting accepted into college was dependent upon Michael dying. So it's likely in ending A, we just don't learn that she's going to college, but she still is off-screen. And lastly, with ending C, yeah, I would say Tracy would go to college. I mean, all the bad guys get dealt with. I mean, the bad guys we don't like. And obviously the whole family is safe, so why wouldn't Tracy just go to college?
I'm going legit. Responsible.
Right. And Jimmy's getting a job, and Tracy's going to college.
And I'm like definitely doing the test again. I've started filling in the form, but Dad hooked me up with his audition, so...
And I'm a movie producer.
Clearly she has an interesting going. What would have happened if Michael never said, "You forget 1,000 things every day, pal. How about you make sure this is one of them," during the Jewel Store Heist?
You forget 1,000 things every day, pal. Make sure this is one of them.
So really this question relates to whether or not Trevor would have reunited with Michael if not for this quote, and if Trevor didn't reunite with Michael, what would have happened? So it should be noted that at the beginning of Mr. Phillips, Dave isn't concerned about some quote Michael made.
The whole job. Everything about it. Anyone who knows your file, what is wrong with you?
Clearly Michael and Lester have a set way that they do certain heists, and so anyone who knows Michael well would see that heist and go, hey, this is the kind of heist that Michael Townley does.
That wasn't you guys then at the Rockford Hills Jewel Store. Hey, that's right around the corner from my house, T. I certainly wasn't robbing. Oh, okay, my mistake. It was a pretty tight job though, eh? I mean, the planning was there, they went in, right? They got out clean. I mean, there were some problems, but they kept their heads, right? Yeah, pulled it off. All right. It was us. Of course it was us.
Trevor would obviously be intimately familiar as to how Michael pulls off heists, so it still could be possible even without this quote that Trevor would have gone, hey, wait a second, the details of that job. Isn't this how we used to do it back in the day? Maybe he never would have learned the details of the job. Maybe without that quote, it wouldn't be enough to get him all riled up and looking for Michael Townley. But it's possible, even without that quote, if Michael kept doing jobs and they kept being reported on, Trevor would eventually hear of them and make the connection without it. So then, of course, Trevor would just hunt down Michael as he did before and find him in the same way, and they would eventually reunite. Of course, another option is that Trevor could have ended up seeing Tracy on TV. Trevor does remark that he hates Laszlo, so it's likely that he's watched his shows at least in some capacity.
I hate that closeted man whore on the TV. I hate him even more in person.
As to whether or not Michael would continue doing heists if Trevor didn't show up, of course he would. Sure, he had now paid off Martin because he pulled down his house, but obviously he really enjoys the thrill of the bank heist. And now back in the game, he's not gonna let that go.
Man, you know what? You are wasted sitting by that fucking pool, man.
You're right.
All that knowledge up there is withering and dying, dog. You don't pass that shit on, it's gone, homie.
He'd likely just continue using Franklin as an excuse to keep doing more jobs. Maybe he'd say, well, you know, I gotta pay off my mortgages and stuff. Need a little bit more money, just a little bit more.
I ain't saying your pop should be out pulling scores and shit, but dude, he ain't meant to be sitting on no fucking couch either.
Then of course there's still Dave with the FIB. While Dave does somewhat use the threat of Trevor to get Michael on board, Michael still would have come on board. Because obviously if someone went through Dave's files, they could still find out that Michael was still alive and that is a threat to his safety and security. So in other words, I think it's safe to say that Michael would have continued doing heists and would have ended up working with Steve and Dave even if Trevor wasn't in the picture. So how would Trevor not being around have impacted that? I honestly think Michael and Franklin would have just died. Ignoring all the small grunt work that he does, just another gun being there are specific scenes where Trevor saves Franklin and Michael. Like on the wrap-up, Trevor comes in and saves Michael.
The fuck?
Hey! If anyone's gonna kill you, old friend, it's gonna be me!
And Franklin afterwards, when speaking to Steve and Dave, says Trevor saved you.
Man, Trevor saved you. He saved both y'all asses.
Like, what would have happened on Hood Safari without Trevor?
Did we ask for a key or a fucking ounce! You can't fucking hustle a hustler!
Either Lamar and Franklin would have just been shot dead by the ballers, or they would have got ripped off and they would have owed a lot of money to probably some very dangerous people.
What you taking some crazy white dude around the hood for?
Cause that crazy white dude's the only reason why we ain't buy a brick of plaster, motherfucker. He the reason why we still breathing.
So ultimately, while Michael was justifiably scared when Trevor came back into his life, it was ultimately, in my opinion, for the best. Why does Michael not just pay Martin after the Jewel Store heist and end the game? I mean, for a start, Michael does pay Martin. In fact, if you continually visit the house that Michael pulled down during marriage counseling, you can see it slowly rebuild throughout the game. As for the game ending there, the only thing set up in the initial part of the game that is resolved at that point is Martin's house. Michael's family life is still a mess. He's still fairly dissatisfied with his life. Now getting a taste of being back in the game, he'll obviously want to continue that. Franklin, while getting a nice injection of cash, still doesn't have that many future prospects. And of course, just a little while later, Trevor finds out that Michael's alive and comes to visit. And to be clear, the problem of Trevor wasn't just made up after the Jewel Store heist so the game could continue. The problem of Trevor was established in the beginning of the game, that being Prologue. So yeah, it's not like they wrapped up everything set up in the beginning of the game at that point. After the Jewel Store heist, why does Michael not worry about Trevor finding out when he knows that Trevor ran away during Prologue? During Case in the Jewel Store, when Michael's climbing to the roof to look at the vents, he does talk to Lester about Trevor.
Where did they bury him?
They buried him? Not as far as I know.
He's probably a John Doe then, right? What do you think? OD, shootout, maybe just a car crash, right? Anonymous charred remains on the highway. They only knew what a sick puppy they had on their hands.
Michael asserting that of course Trevor has to be dead by now, and even after the heist when Dave confronts him, Michael says,
don't worry about Trevor, Trevor's dead. It's gotta be.
Jimmy later explains to Trevor why Michael likely thought this.
I thought you were dead.
What made you think that?
You were the subject of a nationwide manhunt, and your lifestyle didn't exactly suggest longevity.
You were 12 years old. What'd you know about lifestyle?
The cans and the guns and the needles. A 12-year-old knows.
When Trevor does finally show up on Fame or Shame, Michael does actually look really surprised. And I think he has every right to be. From what we know of the time when Trevor and Michael were doing their robberies, it almost seems like Michael was like the leash on the dog.
I've seen his eyes. He's crazy. No one's crazy. I think. Be cool.
That's right, pal. I'm fucking crazy.
Oh, boy.
Like Trevor's temper would get the best of him, he'd hurt someone or kill someone, and they'd have to quickly flee.
Michael always was a bit of a pussy.
Yeah, Trevor was always a lot of a psycho.
I miss the old days.
Oh, you do you?
I miss my innocence.
Innocence? You?
Yeah. We'd do a job, and he'd want to leave town right away.
He'd kill someone in broad daylight, and we'd have to jump town.
Like I said, a pussy.
Based on this knowledge, Michael would be like, look, without me there, Trevor's just gonna get himself killed. He'll pick the wrong fight with the wrong person and you end up dead in a ditch. Clearly he was wrong, but I don't think that assumption is truly unwarranted. And certainly on Michael's part, it was probably a little bit of wishful thinking as well. Just so every day he didn't have to worry that Trevor's gonna be around the corner, he probably just eventually said to himself, look, he's dead, he's never come back, it's fine. What would happen if Michael's plan went correctly and Dave actually hit Trevor and killed him instead of killing Brad? So the best way to answer these questions is to change as few variables as possible. We could therefore interpret this question to be the same as one I've already answered, that being, 9 years after Prologue, what happens if Trevor doesn't come back into Michael's life? And so I'd give the same answer. Michael and Franklin would likely die. The problems that Michael was having in Los Santos and the problems he eventually has with Steve and Dave have nothing to do with Trevor. Michael still would have gotten back in the game for financial reasons, and he still would have gotten involved with law enforcement because of his corrupt deal with Dave that he made so many years ago. Both of these avenues, without the help of Trevor, likely would have seen Michael dead. Does Michael's family actually know what Michael does, like his crimes, or are they oblivious? Oh, they are obviously aware. Like Jimmy on the mission day, his little girl says, I always knew you were a bad guy.
A crook, a killer, a thief, a liar.
You know, at your age,
I know, in prison.
A lazy shit like you would get eaten alive in the pen.
It's a good thing I'm not the most likely one in the household to be convicted of a felony then.
Well, maybe they should bring back debtors' prisons.
I think they've got plenty to worry about with the wanted bank robbers going on stealing and murdering sprees.
I don't recall as many lines from Tracy, but there are phone calls and text messages where she says, I'm worried about you getting killed, or I don't care if you get killed, such things. And certainly on Reuniting the Family, there's that whole blow up between Amanda and Michael, where Amanda says everything she thinks of him.
You kill people, and then you sit in the sun and drink and feel guilty about it. That is not work.
I don't see you complaining on the way to the fucking bank.
Him saying, yeah, you knew exactly who I was, but that didn't stop you spending my money. And it's not like Tracy or Jimmy were like, what? My father is a murderer? I had no idea. They don't express such sentiments because they already knew.
Where are the bikes?
At the rental place.
You? Rent?
What?
I just thought you'd cruise around till you found an old lady on her way to the shops, knock her to the road, and cycle off on her bike. If you are robbing and probably killing again, can you please not get shot or arrested in the house? It'd be really embarrassing.
Although I sincerely doubt every single minute detail of his criminal career is known by Amanda, Tracy, or Jimmy, I do think that Amanda actually thought Michael was in witness protection, being protected by the FIB as a whole.
See, I'm a semi-successful crook. You're a bit of a failure, but hey, kudos for trying.
Not that successful if you're in witness protection.
As in the government gave him an actual witness protection deal because he ratted on his friends, rather than what actually happened in that Michael had a corrupt deal with specifically Dave, and Dave used his connections to the FIB to hide them. Obviously both from the criminal enemies that Michael had, as well as from the justice system itself. Although Amanda does reference lying to the FIB, so maybe she does know something.
I mean, how do you explain faking our deaths? Changing our names, all the lying to the FIB?
Where did Michael's family go when they left him alone? Michael's family technically leaves him twice, once at the end of yoga when Amanda is fed up with his shit.
We've decided to move out for a while.
Fuck. You moved out? Your mother's gone, and
I know! I told her to go!
Tracy!
You're gonna die alone, Pop!
And once after the events of Meltdown because Michael doesn't feel that they're safe from Merryweather.
They came to my house, Lester. My house! So I asked Amanda and the kids to move out for a few days.
You know some guys just tried to kill us at the house?
Is everyone okay?
Yeah, we're gangster, dog.
Hey, Jim, how you holding up?
I think Mom and Trace are like mad worried.
You stay safe, Jim. Try to keep a low profile.
Obviously this question refers to the first time they leave. As for where they go, for a start, we know they don't go far because Jimmy returns to the house while Michael and Trevor are in Sandy Shores hiding from Martin Madrazo.
Are you gonna tell me why some beast Mexicans were parked outside of the crib for a couple weeks? Have you, heard from my dad? He hasn't been back to the house for a while, and there's some creepy-ass dudes parked outside.
The place the family most likely goes is just around the corner, the Richmond Hotel. This is where we take Jimmy on the side mission Parenting 101 if you happen to get the phone call to start the mission during the time Michael's family has left him.
If only someone would save me!
The troll is back in his lair. Now stay off the internet for a while.
Obviously, whenever the family has reason to leave in general, they just check into a hotel, as is shown at the end of Reuniting the Family.
Kids, rooms. If you find dead bodies, cheap women, or Trevor Phillips, we're checking into the Rockford Hills Hotel.
Why did Michael decide to move to Los Santos and not any other place? Obviously, it was for the weather. It is clear that Michael and Amanda spent most of their lives in the northern part of the United States on the border with Canada, a place that is far colder than where they end up. In the past dialogue that we hear on Bury the Hatchet, Michael is actually trying to sell Amanda on the idea of leaving, saying, hey, we can go somewhere where it's always sunny.
Do you want to die here where it's always snowing? Or do you want to go and live where it's always sunny?
Along with this, in the game and the trailer, we do hear that Michael has an obsession with movies and TV. And certainly, a lot of TV and movies are shot in California. So given that obsession, ending up there kind of makes sense. Although certainly Trevor has a different view.
I can tell why you like Vinewood so much. You like it because it's just like you. Plastic and fake. The world champion of phoniness has come to the world capital of fakeness. And what a surprise! You fit right in.
Why is Michael involved with a movie? So while Michael had already casually been introduced to Devin Weston during the mission by the book, he doesn't really speak much to him until the end of the Blitzplay heist. And on this heist, our gang is instructed by Steve Haines to steal some treasury bonds to give to Devin Weston. While Devin is taking possession of these treasury bonds, he says to Michael, look, I've got another job for you.
Hey, hold on. We're not done here yet. I got a job for you, bro.
That's great. I got just the guy for you. I'll put you in touch.
Devin, of course, being the billionaire guy, always gets what he wants. He's like, no. I want you to do this job for me.
I want you. I want your crew. I want pros on this.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck what you want, pencil neck.
So of course, Devin tries to sweeten the deal to get him interested. He offers Michael a variety of things and then just says, look, what are you interested in? At many points in time earlier in the game, we are shown and told that Michael likes old movies.
You know me. I'm a movie guy. I want to make movies.
It is therefore not a surprise that he says to Devin Weston,
I just like sitting around watching old movies.
Oh, there we go. How about I hook you up with Solomon Richards?
Bullshit. Solomon Richards, the movie producer?
That of course then leads to Michael working with Solomon Richards, saving the movie Meltdown, and of course in the process saving the movie studio. You know, preventing it from being knocked down and turned into condos like Devin Weston wanted.
The movie's nearly done, so if the plug's pulled now, the investors, meaning us, get a massive insurance payout. Meanwhile, I can use that to get the other major shareholder, the old bastard's idiot son, to agree to tear this relic down and let me redevelop the area for condos.
Fuck that! I'm a producer! Nobody fucks with my film!
And after all that transpires, Michael continues to work in the movie business with Solomon Richards, achieving what was likely a long-held dream of his. Did Michael's movie with Mr. Richards ever get released? Did it get mentioned in the storyline? Of course it got released. The movie's called Meltdown. It's why there's a mission called Meltdown. You literally drive to the premiere. You don't get to see the movie at the time because you get interrupted by Devin Weston threatening your family, but it does release. You were at the premiere. You can even go to the cinemas in the game and watch it. If at the end of the game you pick Death Wish, Michael actually receives a phone call from Solomon talking about the reception of the movie. While he says it got mixed reviews, he does go on to say that it's the biggest box office hit of his career, which makes it understandable why he wants to make a sequel and why Michael keeps working at the movie studio.
When are we making our next movie?
Soon, Michael, soon. You don't know anyone with some liquidity for financing?
Actually, I know a guy who's come into some cash. Let's do lunch.
Excellent. I'll see you soon. I love you, Michael.
Did Michael ever get his boat back? So on the mission father-son, Jimmy tries to sell Michael's boat to some shady people and they end up stealing it from him.
Oh, there it is. That's my boat.
With the help of Franklin, Michael saves his son, but unfortunately loses his boat.
Ah, my fucking boat.
At no point in the story do we see Michael getting his boat back. I think if he didn't have the distractions that he did, he probably would have hunted that down more, but obviously in the story he had more important things to do. However, you can simply follow the boat on the mission father-son to see where it ends up. Not that it ends up anywhere interesting, mind you, it just travels all throughout the city until eventually the car pulling it disappears, and so it ends up in the middle of the road. In the mission Did Somebody Say Yoga, Michael meets a bunch of monkeys, ends up on a UFO, meets some aliens, and then falls and lands on the ground. Was any of that actually real? Given that cutscenes in GTA 5 have their own consistent internal logic, Michael would have just died from a fall like that. There is no reason to believe that those monkeys or aliens or anything like that are actually real for Michael. He was obviously given hallucinogens by Jimmy.
Oh, who's in there? It's harmless, but you've been using it for decades. You anesthetize me? You fucking protecting you.
And likely his brain just brought forth a bunch of things from the old movies that he watches, and of course memories of conversations that he's had with other people like his therapist.
What do you want, Michael?
Michael has also been shown to have somewhat of a phobia of aliens, like on the mission Grassroots. A better question is, how did he end up on the grass? When Jimmy kicks him out of the car, we do see Michael get immediately pulled away, but by who? It's never explained, but clearly he was robbed and then just dumped on the grass. But it doesn't super make sense that someone was just waiting in the wings to immediately mug a dude who happened to fall on the ground. I guess criminals in the GTA universe are just really on the ball. Did Michael stash all his money from his years of robbing in his boat, and that's why he didn't want to lose it? Obviously not. On the mission Derailed, Trevor does say that he lost access to his millions because his identities were blown after the Ludendorff job.
Hey, you had your savings.
That I couldn't access because you blew the identities. You know, there was nothing for Brad's defense.
But Michael obviously wasn't surprised that things were going to change after that job, so he would have moved his money to places where he would still have access to it. Maybe at some point he may have stashed some of it physically, but he's referenced as having an accountant, so obviously the accountant was doing something.
But you can always buy another boat.
Yeah, tell my accountant that.
And besides, by that point, Michael had lost most of his money anyway. Even if he was stashing it in the boat, it wouldn't have been that much. But to be clear, he didn't want to lose his boat because it was his boat.
I like looking at it.
Looking?
Yeah. You know, I'd come down to the marina, sit on the dock, pour myself a drink, and look at her. Jacqueline.
Well, maybe you need to do some other shit to fill your time.
And it's not like he could afford to buy a new one. Doesn't Michael's rant at the therapist's office during the mission reuniting the family confirm that Amanda was actually there in Prologue?
I don't see you complaining on the way to the fucking bank!
When Michael says, "I didn't see you complaining on the way to the fucking bank," he's not talking about a specific bank. This is simply him expressing that Amanda didn't complain while she was spending Michael's money. She knew who he was, how he got his money, and she didn't care when she was spending it. While this is the end of the video, if you want to see me make more lore videos about Grand Theft Auto 5, hit that like and subscribe button so I know you're interested. Because trust me, I can film many more videos about the interesting lore that I know about Grand Theft Auto 5 that I assure you most people don't know. But until next time, I wish you all the best.